Hey everyone, I'm Tessa and we're the sophomore River Stewards.
I'm Cassie, and I just wanted to welcome everyone to Dayton's Children's Water Festival.
Hi, I'm Lily, and to begin, we want to talk about water. Water is crucial to life and our society. We cannot live without it. Here is the 8-step process that we will want to specifically point out to you. We begin with water, like rain and snow going down the storm drains. The storm drains then go directly to the river. The river is connected to the aquifer. The water is then pumped from the aquifer to the water treatment plant through underground pumps. Then from here, water makes its way to our homes and businesses. Have you ever thought about where water goes once you flush the toilet or turn on the faucet? Well, the answer is the wastewater treatment plant. The water is cleaned here. Once it is cleaned, it makes its way back to the river. I know this seems complicated and you might have gotten lost in our description, but don't worry. Sit back, relax, and enjoy as we break down the modern day steps of the water cycle that is unique to Dayton. We are going to start by talking about the first step in this process, water.
Hey kids, I'm Annie. Have you guys heard of natural resources? Can you give me a big nod yes if you know what that means? A natural resource is something that comes from the earth and is really useful to us people. Some examples of natural resources are the wood we use to build our houses and the pretty forests we get to enjoy when we go hiking. What do you think Dayton's #1 natural resource is? Really quickly, turn and tell your neighbor what you think. Those were some great ideas. Here are what some University of Dayton students think that Dayton's #1 natural resource is.
Is it coal?
I'd say it's probably like gravel or something, like a sediment or sand.
Dayton's #1 resource would probably be water.
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 Water? Am I supposed to? Water?
Yes.
Did any of you guess water? That's right. Dayton's #1 natural resource is water. Think about all of the wonderful things water can be used for. Brushing your teeth, staying hydrated, going kayaking, taking a shower, and more. Take a minute and turn to your neighbor and say one thing that you like to use water for. There are so many wonderful things that we can use water for. We're so lucky to have so much fresh water here in Dayton.
I mean, Annie is so right. Water is such an important resource to the Dayton area. Just think about all the rivers that are around us. The Great Miami River, the Mad River, Stillwater River, Wolf Creek, and Twin Creek. I mean, we are just so blessed to have so much rain and snow every single year. The forecast in our weather is the main natural way that our rivers are replenished.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth. So we just talked about water and how it's a natural resource. How do you think rainwater in your neighborhood ends up in the river? Take a minute and tell your neighbor what you think. Those were probably some great answers. Did anyone guess storm drains? If you did, great job. If you didn't, that's okay too. This is a storm drain. If you look closely, you may find medallions on the storm drains. These are signs on the drain that indicate the drains go directly to the river. You may not even notice the storm drains, but they're along sidewalks and streets all throughout Dayton. To protect fish, birds, and other wildlife, try not to let trash or anything besides water fall into them.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I'm going to be talking about the river. Here we are emphasizing how the storm drains and the river are related. Storm drains dump everything they capture into the river. What could possibly be some negative side effects of storm drains dumping straight into the river? Turn to your neighbor and think about it. I bet those were some good guesses. So pollutants like fertilizer and trash can be carried directly into Dayton's rivers. When someone litters their trash, that trash usually ends up in a storm drain and then in our rivers. Weather like rain and snow collects the trash and washes it down the storm drains. The River Stewards painted some storm drains to let people know not to let anything but water go down the drains.
I'm Jill. Now we're going to be talking about an aquifer. So, what is an aquifer? An aquifer is a large underground area of water-bearing sand and gravel deposits. It's like a sponge underground. It holds the water that eventually goes into your home and schools. Under the city of Dayton, there's an aquifer. Here's a little graphic of what an aquifer actually looks like. So, why are aquifers so important? It gives us water to provide to our schools and our homes, and it's also a reliable source of clean water. So, how many gallons of water do you think are in Dayton's aquifer? Here are what some University of Dayton students think about how many gallons are in the aquifer.
Do you know, so Dayton actually has an aquifer. It's a large underground area with sand that holds water. Do you want to guess how many gallons of water are in Dayton's aquifer?
100,000. 1 million.
900,000.
I think there's about 1 million gallons.
Maybe 500?
A million.
At least 2.
As you can see, a lot of the Dayton students underestimated how many gallons there are. There are over 1.5 trillion gallons of water in our aquifer.
Now that we just talked about the aquifer, let's talk about how the aquifer is connected to our water treatment plant. Take a minute and think. Where do you believe the water in your faucet and toilet comes from and goes to? Take a couple seconds and tell your neighbor. I'm sure there's some really good guesses, but where the water comes from is the drinking water treatment plant. We're going to talk about some of the processes that gets the water from our wells to your house. First, the water is pumped from our well fields and is pumped straight to the water treatment plant. It has to go through a series of processes to make sure it's up to governmental standards and ready for drinking. It's first pumped into large basins that kind of look like giant swimming pools, but they're not for swimming. In these areas, a lot of chemicals are pumped into the water, like chlorine, which is added to keep it clean, and fluorine, which helps for your teeth. Then the water is put into sand filters. They're like big containers of beach sand where the water trickles through and helps filter out any pollutants. The water then goes through big pumps and pipes out to the community and into your house. All right, and then the next step is our homes and businesses. Water is pumped from this cleaning plant to our homes and businesses. Let's start with a recap with where the water comes from. It all starts at the aquifer you all just learned about. When you turn on a faucet, water is pumped from the aquifer, then sent through pipes underground to the water treatment center. After the water is treated and cleaned, it goes back underground into pipes and is sent to your homes, schools, pools, and favorite other places. Now, where does it go after it goes back down the drain? It goes back underground to the wastewater treatment plant, where the water is cleaned, and then the water flows back into our river, which then goes back to the aquifer. Have you all started to notice the cycle?
Hi everyone, I'm Allison, and I'm going to be talking about the wastewater treatment plants. So think for a minute about who you think is responsible for making our aquifer safe and sustainable. Did you say the wastewater treatment plant and its employees? If not, that's okay, but let me tell you a little more about why wastewater treatment plants are so important. Without the wastewater treatment plants, all the dirty water that goes down the drain would end up in the river. The river would be gross and you wouldn't be able to enjoy it nearly as much as you do now.
The wastewater treatment plants are able to filter out everything except for paints, medications, and a lot of different kinds of chemicals. So you need to make sure that these things get disposed of properly instead of just pouring them down the drain at home. This is an image of the Dayton, Ohio's wastewater treatment plant. As you can see, the plant is very large, and at the bottom of the image, you can see the river in Dayton. And that is actually where the water from the treatment plant goes after it's been cleaned, and it's let out of the treatment plant cleaner than it came in, and often cleaner than the river. Now turn to your neighbor and tell them how you specifically can take care of our aquifer. Those were some great answers. You can take care of our aquifer by making sure you don't litter and dispose of waste in the proper disposal areas, and also by making sure that waste doesn't go down the storm drains. Wastewater that goes down the drain is treated before it's being released into the natural environments. And when it's released, like in the diagram I showed earlier of the wastewater treatment plant, it's released into the river a lot cleaner than it started. However, storm drain water isn't treated, and it goes directly into the nearest body of water, like our river that we love it here in Dayton. And so things like trash and chemicals can end up in the river too when snow melts or when it rains. These things can get washed into the storm drain. So that's why we need to be extra careful that trash and chemicals don't end up just laying around and we dispose of them properly. And then to make some connections between the aquifer and the non-treatment water center, the river feeds into our aquifer. And in order to protect our aquifer, we need to keep it from getting polluted so that the water that we drink is safe. And so to go back again, we need to make sure that these chemicals, paints, trash, medication, any of this doesn't end up in storm drains and doesn't go down the drain, because it'll all end up in our river because we can't filter it out, and we also don't filter our storm drained rivers. So whether or not it goes down our drain or if it goes down the storm drain, it'll end up in the river either way. So we need to make sure these things get disposed of properly.
After the wastewater treatment plant, what is the next step? Well, all that clean water, as we said before, gets sent back into the river, which joins up with all the other water in Dayton. Now our water cycle has come back to the beginning and can start again here in Dayton or in another city down the river. Now that we have learned all about how the river impacts us and how we can help the river, you can share the information you all have learned today.
Now that we see how connected our rivers, streams, and lakes, and most importantly, our aquifer are, it is important to protect it. The water takes care of us, so it's our turn to take care of it forever. Our challenge for you is to pick up one piece of trash in your neighborhood and throw it away. Us River Stewards want to say thank you so much for watching this presentation, and we hope you learned something about our aquifer and how special it is to our city.